let's talk about buyer personas. Take a second to imagine what a Harley-Davidson customer looks like. Like imagine a typical Harley-Davidson customer. And if you're like me, you're probably going to imagine somebody that's like an older man, maybe like a whitish goatee, tattoos, leather jacket, bandana, leaning up against their bike. This is what you would imagine a typically Harley customer to be. And by the way, like if you didn't, like go to ChatGPT or Gemini and say, make me an image of a Harley customer, and I would be willing to bet that that's exactly the image you're gonna get. So this is what we have in mind. This is what we think is the buyer persona of Harley-Davidson. But you'd be shocked to find that that kind of persona, like someone that makes up that demographic, makes up just 3.5% of Harley-Davidson's revenue. And that's really surprising. You would imagine it's 60%, 80%, right? It's like, oh, 80% of our revenue comes from the top 20% of our... No, it's not true. It's not true. And most brands follow this same pattern. This isn't a Harley-Davidson thing. Coca-Cola, the majority of their customers consume between 1 and 2 cans of Coke a year. That's surprising, because we think of Coca-Cola as a brand that people are very loyal to, that they buy very frequently. It's not the case. And these are brands that you would think that there's a lot of like fanatical loyalists. Apple, right? People love Apple. I like Apple. The majority of their customers are not as loyal as you think. This is true for every single successful brand that you will find. And the dynamic here is that for successful brands, the majority of their customers would be referred to as a light customer. They are not a heavy buyer, and they're likely not very loyal. They will switch between different, so long as they're in market for this category, they will switch between different brands kind of promiscuously. And that's just how buyer behavior has always worked. And so this idea of like loyalty, like we need to challenge that. This idea of fanatical customers, we need to challenge that. And then it really goes down to like, well, who is the Harley-Davidson customer? And I think the mistake that we make often in marketing with like our buyer persona exercises and our creative briefs is that we go through this like kind of like this dogmatic exercise to say like, who is our target customer? And then we build our marketing messaging around like specifically that person. And we really narrow our focus. And in doing so, and forgetting the fact that like most of our customers should be light buyers, the most amount of revenue that we can acquire, the most amount of market share that we can acquire will come from light buyers, that oftentimes our marketing alienates the majority of the market. And that's where a lot of marketing plans and a lot of marketing strategies will plateau or fail altogether. Because if you're just talking to the gray-haired, bandana-wearing, beer-drinking, tattooed man as Harley-Davidson, and not speaking at all or not being receptive at all to the 45-year-old CPA that lives in the Midwest that like is kind of interested in buying a Harley bike, you're not going to increase the probability that they actually choose your brand in the end. And I think that's a mistake that so many brands make. So forget about Harley for a second. There's experience that I have that is very, very close to home where I first really kind of, this light bulb went off for me. Imagine for a second a college student who's very involved in philanthropy, specifically a philanthropy that raises money for cancer research, right? Picture what that student is, right? What's their background? What's their family life like? What are they studying? How do they spend their free time? Just think for a second on what kind of dynamics make up that target customer, that buyer persona. And you probably have someone in mind that's like, okay, like, maybe it's a 19 or 20-year-old that somebody in their life is deeply affected by cancer. Maybe they were affected by cancer. Maybe they're studying something like, maybe they're pre-med. Maybe they're studying something in science. They're making this their life's mission. This is probably a really good person with their life together. They probably wake up early in the morning, have a good diet, exercise habits. They empty the dryer lint after every time they do laundry. That's probably what you would have in mind for this kind of like really good person. My experience hasn't been exactly that. And so when I was in college, I was involved in a philanthropy that raised money for cancer research, for childhood cancer research. And that demographic doesn't make up mine. Like I wasn't pre-med, I wasn't the world's best student, I wasn't the most organized. I went to Penn State, and the Penn State Dance Marathon is the largest student-run philanthropy in the world. It is the most successful and largest by a mile. They've raised more than $250 million since its inception. Last year alone, they raised over $18 million. This is a massive organization that's completely run by student volunteers. A lot of money being raised, right? By a lot of people, a lot of volunteers that don't meet that specific demographic that you would think of. And so what the Penn State Dance Marathon, or it's referred to as THON, what it does really well is it makes it very accessible for any Penn State student to get involved. It's almost hard to not get involved. Like if you're a Penn State student, and if you know anyone that went to Penn State, like ask them, don't ask them if they were involved with THON, ask them what they did for THON. It is difficult to avoid getting involved in some way or another. They haven't just done their marketing material, so to speak, to like just target that individual who makes it their life's mission to raise money for cancer research. They've sort of opened their doors and said, we're gonna make this a really amazing organization to be involved with. It's fun, it's cool. It's a great way to meet people, right? You're a freshman on a massive campus with 40,000 undergrad. How do you make friends? I don't know, join an organization. You know, it's a great organization. THON, because not only do you get to meet really awesome people, it's also for a great cause. That's what makes it so successful year after year after year. The last example that I'll give is Tesla. Electric cars have been around for decades. And we've all known that the environment is something we should care about. And we've all known that it'd be cheaper, like to not have to spend $4.68 on gasoline in New York. So the benefits are there, right? I can't think of another more rational argument than buy an electric car. You're going to save money. You don't have to go to the gas station anymore, and it's good for the planet. Like if you're speaking to somebody rationally, that's like the best rational argument you could ever have. It's good for the environment. It'll save you money. Why haven't we all been driving electric cars for the last 30 years? Well, it's inconvenient, and it doesn't meet the societal norms, and it hasn't crossed that threshold yet of all the other things that allow something to actually reach a tipping point and reach the real mass audiences. Until Tesla came around. And at some point in the, mid 2010s, driving a Tesla, I'm pulling up next to one right now. I wish I could show what's happening at the Tesla next to me because it fits the buyer persona that I would think of here. It became cool. This girl driving next to me certainly thinks she's cool. I'm just gonna say it. It became a bit of a status symbol. It's like, I drive a Tesla. It has a little bit to do with the environmental factor, but like, it's cool. The whole Tesla vision didn't stop there. Like, yes, it's cool, and yes, it's good for the environment, and yes, you don't have to pay like $1 million for gas. Also, there's all these cool features in the car. Also, it's got the greatest buying experience of all time, right? Tesla's the first brand that you don't have to go to a dealership. You can go to their website, buy a car like it's a typical e-commerce purchase, and then they bring it to your house. I don't know about you, I hate going to dealerships. So like, that by itself is enough of a reason for me to consider a Tesla. So they're not, like, Tesla like came around and was like, yeah, the percentage of the population that's going to be interested in buying an electric car because it's good for the environment, because it's like, maybe more cost effective. We've already exploited that. Like that's already done. That's already commoditized. We're going to make a brand that's cool. We're going to put like some really cool features and gizmos inside the car. It's going to have this like awesome screen that you're going to look at. The thing freaking drives itself, right? Like, another reason that you should be interested in getting a Tesla, the thing drives itself. So like, you have your main mission statement as a company or as an organization, right? For THON, it's raise money for childhood cancer research. For Tesla, it might be to change the world and get us all on electric vehicles. I'm not really so sure. Whatever your mission is, but like your middle of the funnel marketing, kind of the rest of your marketing messages, like, need to show that you are accessible and open to the light buyers of the marketplace. And that is such an important point that so many marketers miss when they're laser focused on trying to say, who is the exact person I'm talking to? I'm only going to talk to them. I'm going to be blind to everything else.